Oh, a mouse. Yeah, I think, yeah, I was a mouse because I couldn't speak up for myself. When I was in school, I couldn't raise my hand because I didn't want to give a wrong answer and I just couldn't speak. I didn't have any confidence in myself. No confidence whatsoever. None.
Well,
Because of the way I was brought up as a child. It wasn't good.
Growing up in an abusive home, Sandra struggled with low self-esteem and unhealthy relationships well into adulthood. But after years of counseling, support groups, and personal growth, Sandra finally found her voice. Now she's gone from mouse to roaring leopard.
But now I speak up. It took a long time. Like I'm now my age and I'm strong now. I call myself a roaring leopard because I like leopard print.
The story also features insight from a psychologist on the importance of counseling for older adults dealing with childhood trauma.
that the impact of your parenting style or your parents' parenting style on your identity formation and development is very impactful. And oftentimes the conversations that I have with men and or women, we'll talk about trauma or what happened to them, but what people sometimes overlook is what didn't happen.
In this powerful Unison TV story, Sandra shares how childhood trauma can continue affecting people later in life and why it's never too late to seek help and healing.
And yeah, it made me have no confidence and very insecure. And I thought I was ugly. I never thought I was pretty. I never had any positive things at all about myself. Not at all. Not at all. But then it took me till I was about 30. Then I took personal best and I took individual counseling and group things. And I just worked on myself like I was like a sponge to learn as much as I possibly could to improve myself. Because I said I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be that person, a mouse. I don't even know that how I survived. Yeah, but I just think back of all those things that get flashbacks of those boyfriends and stuff. I try to let it go, but then the last one, it really sent me to flashbacks. But then I'm thinking, I'm so happy that I'm away from that now. We lived in an old house on 28th Avenue, and it was probably ready for demolition. And my dad didn't want to spend the money on the rent, so it was $65. The walls were sweating. I got bronchitis all the time. I was sick all the time with bronchitis. So then he was dying of cancer. So we had to move to an apartment close to my mom's work, which was across 80 Heritage. And we lived in the cheap rental there, and then the nursing home was there. So then he was a cat that went out. My dad made a little door for him to go in and out, and it was an unfinished basement. So he'd come in and out, and my mom had no clue. She hated animals. And so we ended up taking him to the apartment, and I didn't know what a litter box was. I'm 10 years old, 11. She didn't know. My dad was too sick. So he peed under the floor, under the bed, and pooped, and then she didn't know what to do, so she threw him out, and then she threw him out in 40 below. Back then it was 40 below, back in those days. And she threw him out. And I was terrified of her, so I didn't go back and get it. And that's haunted me, traumatized me for my whole life. And then I never allowed myself to have a pet until I was 52. Well, I was abused as a child. My mom hit me a lot and beat me up, and then she would hug and kiss me, and then she'd beat me again, and she'd hug and kiss me, and I was so confused. I didn't know what was going on. Never ever told me she loved me. She criticized me, and my dad wasn't there to protect me, and he was afraid of her, and it was really terrible. It was a very terrible situation. But the good thing is about her that she kept the house very clean, and she taught me how to take care of myself. Like, you go out the door with your hair done and your clothes clean and fresh. Doesn't have to have money to have. She always said, you don't have to have money for a bar of soap. Doesn't cost that much to be clean. And so I still remember that many good things about her, that she taught me that. Well, I went to, after she passed away, she used to go to Indefinite Arts, and because she was disabled and she didn't want to go, but I sort of kind of pushed her into going. So then I went there and I talked to the ladies that knew her, and they went and said that that's all she talked about was you. And she told them how wonderful I was, and how what a great daughter I was. Every single class, they told me that that's all she talked about was me, but I never ever heard a word. She never ever told me anything. Nothing. It was all negative. Don't you know, to this day, I confronted her in counseling and she would not answer. And I said, "Why did you hit me? Why did you do that?" "Your father made me do it." She wouldn't answer. She wouldn't admit anything. Never, to her grave, I never knew anything. Never knew ever anything. Why she did that. I confronted her. She wouldn't answer me. But she felt guilty because I know she said the police would take me away if they found out that she beat me like that. They would take me away. But I didn't tell anybody and she didn't tell anybody. But I just wish she would have told me she loved me. But and I think that's why that I've had low self-esteem and no confidence in meeting the wrong kind of men, because I didn't have the confidence in myself to say no way back then.
I'm sure there's, many of our viewers would say, "Oh, that was just normal in those days." Um, it- and in some cases, yeah, kids were treated differently than they are now. Just in that itself, the extreme of how some children were treated in those days is their benefit in going to counseling for that.
Yeah, there were harsher forms of punishment for sure. I'm sure people still have that experience today, but it's less common or less tolerated. Whereas perhaps in our parents' generation, it was normalized. That the impact of your parenting style or your parents' parenting style on your identity formation and development is very impactful. And oftentimes the conversations that I have with men and or women, we'll talk about trauma or what happened to them, but what people sometimes overlook is what didn't happen. What didn't you get? So, for example, if a person didn't feel nurtured or they didn't feel validated or people didn't identify their strengths and give them the praise that they needed and encouragement, sometimes that can be really negatively impacting. So a person grows up feeling some semblance of neglect or not even being fully valued, and they internalize that as something's wrong with them, and until they get to counseling and realize that no, there wasn't something wrong with you. Perhaps you were parented in a way that didn't meet your needs and didn't help you become fully realized or actualized in a way that was really beneficial to you. And those are things that you can address and support and help people heal and resolve at any point in time in their lives.
That's an interesting point you bring up, because just recently I had the experience of talking to two individuals who had very difficult relationships with their parents and didn't receive any positive feedback from them directly. But then they found out indirectly that that parent would heap praise on their child, but not to the child. The child had to find this out after the parent had died, that, "Oh no, she always talked about you, that you were the greatest thing and was so proud of you." And I said, "Well, Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? Why were you always admonishing me? Or why was there always such a distant relationship to us?"
When you look historically at intergenerational trauma or the way that people are raised, you can see patterns within generations. There's no handbook to parenting, or maybe there are nowadays. There's handbooks to parenting, but nobody has to take a course or learn specific skills to become a parent. Anybody can become a parent, and we learn how to nurture or how to parent based upon how we're parented. So unless we take a very informed or self-directed approach to doing things differently, the chances are you're probably going to repeat patterns that you've had experience with and that you've learned through interaction with your own parents. So when you talk about that specific example, my assumption, you know, without knowing that person or interacting with that person. My assumption would be that within her family, people didn't talk about people's strengths, and people didn't praise people in that way. So it's not uncommon for older generations to have a lot of pride, you know, in regards to their children and their family. And I had a conversation with somebody about this just over the weekend, you know, where they said, yeah, my father never told me that they were proud of me. They never told me how good I was. They were often critical, but yet they told everybody else, right? What a great person I was, or would brag, or whatever have you. And I think that those themes are not uncommon.
You have to get some strength. You have to get strength. It's really hard. I went through so much and I didn't think I had the strength in me, but it's there. It will come out. Once you decide that you want to help yourself, it will come out, because I made the decision. I wanted to help myself. The woman said, "That's not normal." And I thought, no, it's not normal to be abused every day. And it was my friend. And she told me that. And I said, you know what? That was the trigger. And I said, I'm going to counseling and I'm going to get some help. And that's what did it, because I wanted to. I've been working on it since I was 30, but really stronger now, just the last few years. Yeah, 60s. Yeah. And yeah, and the thing is, boundaries are an issue for a lot of people, and I'm still working on boundaries, because you can get bowled over by if you're not watching your boundaries. But now I speak up. It took a long time. Like, I'm now my age, and I'm strong now. I call myself a roaring leopard because I like leopard print. Back then, they had a lot of free courses at the YWCA, and I went to that every they had group therapy. I went for months and years at all different survivors of abuse, adult children of alcoholics. I went to every single course that I possibly could to help myself. I still go to counseling. I enjoy going to counseling because it's somebody to talk to. And then the one that last session, he said he's doing a practicum. He challenges me, not in a mean way, but in a good way, to get me to think. And I did all personal best. That was a thing for the weekend, and I paid, well, it was only $50 back then. And we did the trust fall, which I was terrified. We went backwards and felt, and then we had to abandon a ship. We had to swim to shore, and we had to fight off people and sharks and everything to make sure we were going to get to the edge, to the lead, or to the shore. And I was so strong. I said, I'm going to make it. And I did. And I felt really proud of myself, because I wouldn't have been able to do it before. But those kind of courses really helped me improve myself, because back then I wanted to help myself. I really wanted to help myself. I didn't want to be my mom. I didn't want to be my dad. I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I wasn't going to be a smoker. And I just kept working on myself. Every single class I could get, I took it.
Are we seeing more adults getting counseling?
Well, I guess that would depend upon how you define adults, or what age range we're talking about.
Like 55 plus, we'll say.
Yeah, and generally speaking, 55, yes, but anything older than 60, I would say probably not.
Why do you think that is?
I think historically, if you look at our seniors population or our aging population, counseling wasn't normalized to them in their generation when they were growing up. So they grew up in an era where, you know, you suck it up and you put up, or you tolerate things and work things out. So maybe asking for help or accessing counseling services was just not something that people regularly did.
What kinds of childhood trauma tend to resurface in older age?
Well, I think any exposure to trauma could resurface in older age, but it's not necessarily just trauma. I think the older we are, the more likely that we're going to have traumatic experiences or losses, pardon me, relationship issues, right? Interpersonal issues. We go through life transitions or job losses. So it may or may not be childhood trauma related necessarily, It's cumulative factors and lifelong experiences.
Why can some trauma just stay buried for so many years?
We're very dynamic as humans, and we have the ability to compartmentalize, I guess, and shut things down or put things into boxes, and and that's just a way of coping. Um, and some people are better at it than others. And if there's not an outlet or a language for communicating those kind of interpersonal hardships or psychological traumas, then people do, what they have to do to try to manage and deal with it and cope with it. And I think for a lot of people, that is just compartmentalizing and pushing things down and not talking about it.
So if someone has in fact done that, push things down, how can that unresolved childhood trauma affect someone throughout their life, even if they don't realize?
It can show up in a lot of different ways. It can show up in some self-harming behaviors or coping mechanisms, such as substance abuse or alcohol dependence. It can show up behaviorally in people acting out through anger or withdrawal, shutting down, isolating themselves, maybe not being vulnerable or allowing themselves to be too close to people or express vulnerable emotions or feelings. It can create tension and conflict and in interpersonal relationships. It can show up in roles and responsibility. So perhaps a person might be a perfectionist, or they may like to be in control, or conflict, not be able to receive constructive criticism. There's so many different ways that it could surface.
Can it then contribute to, relationship difficulties or even physical health issues in seniors?
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that trauma manifests in the body. So the body keeps the score, as Gabor Mate would say, so cumulative stress compiles in the body. Your cortisol levels could be increased, which is your stress hormone, or your body just manifests stress in ways like autoimmune deficiency disorders or something of that sort. And I think it's not well researched enough for us to know really how it manifests in the body, but I truly believe that it manifests as illness and in chronic pain and many different things.
And in terms of counseling and healing, is it ever, I guess, quote unquote, too late to heal from childhood trauma?
In my personal opinion, I don't believe it's ever too late to be able to resolve any psychological or interpersonal or unresolved emotional issues that we have. I think there's no time like the present, and irrespective of age.
What does a healing look like for seniors in your point of view?
That's a really good question. I think therapy can provide insights into meaning making, making sense of things that have impacted them over the years, or looking at patterns of behavior, perhaps understanding how certain experiences and events may have impacted them in particular ways and showed up in patterns throughout their lives. Reconciling negative feelings with acceptance, perhaps working through negative thoughts and emotions, learning new ways of coping and adapting, recognizing their strengths. Sometimes just giving language to some of their experiences and understanding. And of course, having that shared experience and being in relationship with somebody who can validate and provide that empathy and understanding and insight with non-judgment or not pathologizing them.
That's huge because that might be the first time in a person's life where someone has just listened.
Yeah, and resolving feelings like shame that they may have associated with their experiences or how that's impacted them.
How can going to counseling improve um, an older adult's sense of self-worth or self-esteem that may have been damaged, say, in childhood?
Yeah, that's a, you know, I There's a lot of things that change and evolve throughout people's lives and as people age. So if you think about some of the issues perhaps that could arise for somebody who's aging, they've had lots of different transitions in their lives, lots of different roles, lots of different losses, unresolved wounds, identity shifts, going from, parent or partner and parent to empty nester, employee to perhaps retirement, maybe being in a long-standing community where they start losing friends, or going from a long time home to a different level of care and a living arrangement. There's so many different things that could happen. So, or they can have a decline in their physical health and a change with their abilities. So identifying and supporting somebody through navigating the impact of those experiences and helping them realize, like fully realize, what the cumulative effect of those experiences, or helping them unpack the long-standing ailments that could result as an impact of that. So, you asked earlier about physical illness or chronic pain could be something that they may want to work through in counseling, or perhaps they now have anxiety or depression, or they're abusing substances. Those are all things that I think you might see manifest working with seniors.
Never too late to help yourself. Never. I can be 90 years old and still want to do go to a group counseling or go help somebody. Yeah, always, always, always. And I bet you when I move into that new place, there's lots of elderly people, and I'll be helping them too. I bet you. I'll be making cookies. I've already decided. I told the girl in the office, I'll be making you some chocolate chip cookies because everybody loves my cookies.
Unison's Wellness Connection Center offers programs to support the mental, emotional, and spiritual health of older adults. The Calgary Counselling Center provides virtual or in-person counseling sessions with fees based on a sliding scale according to income.